I've been keeping planted tanks for over 10 years, and throughout my time, I've had many tanks that have been plagued by blackbeard or blackbrush algae. Now this is one of the most annoying algae and most difficult to get rid of, but the key is understanding what causes it. My name is Calum or Calum's Fish Tanks, and I'm currently working on my master's degree in biochemistry. This is a series I started way back in my undergrad that combines my love for planted tanks and science to make educational videos for you guys on some complex topics. Now before we get started, I think it's very important to clarify this is not going to be a step-by-step video on how to get rid of your blackbeard algae. This is a video about what causes blackbeard algae. Unfortunately, it's a complex topic. Every tank's different, and I can't give a step-by-step guide on how to get rid of this stuff. What I can do is give you guys the tools to understanding what causes it, how it works, and you can use those tools and apply them to your own tank to figure out how you can fix your own blackbeard algae problem. We're going to be doing a couple of case studies where we look at a couple of my different tanks to use them as examples on how I would go about fixing this problem. Believe it or not, blackbeard algae or BBA is caused by one single thing, and that is the buildup or release of organic material. Now I used to hear that and think, okay, that's super easy. It's just fish poop. I need to clean my tanks a little bit better. But it's actually a little bit more complicated than that, and that isn't what that means. To understand how BBA works, you need to understand what organic material or organic waste really means. Now the main culprit isn't actually your fish, even though they do contribute a little bit. It's for the most part going to be your plants. When plant leaves die, they release all the nutrients that BBA loves and what it needs to grow. This is going to be things like different enzymes and proteins and amino acids and DNA. All this stuff, when your plant leaves die and slowly wilt away, they're releasing into the water column, and BBA is sucking it all up and it's using it to thrive and grow. So why and when do your plants release these different molecules? Let's go take a look at a couple of different tanks and use them as examples. We're going to start out with my 24-gallon Dutch-style aquascape, and from afar it's a beautiful tank and the plants look super happy and healthy. But when you get close, you'll notice I have some blackbeard algae growing on my beautiful Buse Ghost 2011. This is an expensive plant, and I've tried a million different things to try to fix this issue, and I just haven't been able to do it. Bucephalandra is a really slow grower, so it's the perfect spot for blackbeard algae to sink its roots in and really flourish. And this clump specifically is in the perfect spot for this algae to grow. Now there's two reasons for this. Number one, it's right in the direction of the flow. Now a lot of people think that flow is a big culprit of BBA, whether it's too high or too low. They think this will cause blackbeard algae, but it's actually a dirty filter. This tank has a surface skimmer attached, which sucks up any dead leaves, which will break down inside, leading it to blow out water that's containing all those nutrients that BBA loves. And just because of the way my layout is set up and where the Buse is, it's right in the way of this flow, and it just circles back over and over it, supplying this BBA with all the nutrients it'll need. And the number two reason is overcrowding. Now it's not the Bucephalandra is too crowded, it's actually the Ludwigia palustris that's right behind it. I've had this stuff for a while and I've gotten a little bit lazy with the maintenance, so I'm just trimming the tops. And what this is doing is causing the plant to get really dense. Now it's a great thing, it looks really good, but the problem is not a lot of light is getting down to those bottom leaves, and they're starting to die off. And they're dying off, releasing all of these nutrients right above my Bucephalandra, which is perfect for this blackbeard algae to thrive. So how would I fix these issues? Well, the first one would be cleaning my filter more often. I've actually started using the Chihiros app, which has an option to track how often you clean your filter, and I'm doing it about every 45 days now. So I track every time I do it. It's really simple. I definitely recommend using it. I track all my water changes and all my trimmings on there as well, and it's been really useful for my bookkeeping, especially when I have 6 tanks on the go. The second thing to fix this would be better plant maintenance. Trimming the tops is okay for the most part, but what happens is you're gonna lose those bottom leaves, and especially when they're right beside a slow grower like Bucephalandra, this is perfect for blackbeard algae. If I were to go do things differently, I'd trim these a lot more frequently and remove the dead bottoms, replanting the healthy tops, and what this will do is it'll prevent those lower leaves from dying off as quick, slowing it down and hopefully releasing less nutrients right on top of those buce. Now let's move over to another tank. This is my 20 long, and bear with me, it's completely covered in blackbeard algae, especially the hardscape. It's a little bit of a mess, and I'm going to explain why. So it's a newer tank for starters, and I recently made a lot of changes, and plants hate changes. When you make even the small changes, plants have to go in and rework all of their biochemistry. They have to change all the enzymes inside of themselves, switching them out to better optimize for their environment. The biochemistry in plants is actually very picky and very complex, so when you make even what you would think is a small change, they have to make a lot of changes to deal with this, releasing all the old stuff out into the water for BBA to grab onto, and then switching it for new stuff that's better suited for their environment. Now, the big change I made to the environment that caused this BBA to go crazy was I added Cereus stone. Now, this probably needs a whole video to itself, because Cereus stone is pretty complex on the effect it has on water, but basically it alters the carbonate hardness, and what happens with that is it buffers the water and takes out CO2. It basically converts CO2 to a different molecule. So what's happened is when I added the Cereus stone, I didn't adjust my CO2, and it's slowly raising the KH, so my CO2 is slowly going lower and lower and fluctuating. So the Cereus stone has only been in there about a month and a half, but the thing is, every time I change my water, my tap water has really low KH, so it drops right back down, and then the Cereus stone slowly builds it back up. So it's got this buffering capacity that's changing up and down at different points of the week, so the CO2 levels in this tank are constantly fluctuating because I decided to add Cereus stone. I kind of forgot that it does this, and I kind of haven't been paying much attention to that tank, so I didn't have a drop checker in there or anything to indicate to me that the CO2 levels have gotten a lot lower. So I didn't notice it first, but after thinking it through, I'm like, oh, that's probably what's going on in that tank, and that's why I have all this BBA all of a sudden. When the CO2 is fluctuating like this, it's one of the most common causes to BBA. What happens is your plants have to adjust those enzymes for the higher and lower CO2 throughout the week. So they're constantly changing, constantly swapping things out and releasing things into the water, which your BBA is of course going to love. And this has a really big effect, especially on those slower growing plants like Bucephalandra, because they're going to be constantly trying to catch up, and they can't because their metabolism is so slow. Now, one pretty interesting thing I noticed about this tank is I hadn't done maintenance for probably about 3 weeks or so. I just got lazy, and my surface skimmer on the tank got pretty clogged up with things like dead leaves, and there's a lot of gunk in there. It was pretty nasty when I cleaned it out. But if I look at the rocks, I can see BBA growing all along where it flows. So the surface skimmer shoots a jet across the tank, and all across the sides of the rocks there's all sorts of BBA. But if I flip around and look at the other side of the rocks, there's no BBA at all, which I found really interesting. It shows that the leaves breaking down in the filter are basically a constant supply of all these nutrients supplied right to, the BBA growing on the outside of the rocks, not the inside. If that makes sense. I feel like I kind of rambled on a little bit there. Now, one thing that makes BBA so hard is it's pretty tough to avoid a lot of these things, and you have to think about them a lot, and there's a lot of work that goes into making these changes. And even when you do make those changes, BBA has a pretty slow metabolism, and it takes a long time to die off, even if the environment is perfect. Now, there's a lot of different chemical treatments out there that you could use to treat the BBA and kill it off, but I'm not really going to get into those too much in this video because that's not what this is about. And if you're watching this video, you've probably seen all those other videos talking about, different ways to kill it off instantly. But the important part is knowing what causes it, and if you are going to kill it off, you need to know how to make sure it doesn't come back, and that's what this video has been about. Now to summarize, BBA is caused by high levels of organic waste. These mainly come from our plant leaves breaking down, things like DNA, all these different bioorganic molecules that your plant leaves will release. Now fish, I didn't mention this much, but fish waste will have a little bit of a role, like fish poop in your substrate, that kind of stuff, but you can kind of take that out with a turkey baster, which is something I also do in my tanks. But it is mainly because of your plants changing because of the environment around them or just dying off in general. So to avoid BBA, you need to practice a proper plant care maintenance regimen where you take care of your plants and make sure they're not, too overcrowded and dying off. And the second thing is you need to practice proper aquarium maintenance in general, making sure to keep up with your filter, making sure to stir up your substrate every once in a while to get rid of all the extra waste, just to make sure there's not too much of a buildup that will cause this BBA to thrive. So I think that's gonna wrap it up, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, make sure to let me know down below in the comments. But anyways, long time no see. This was Kelm's Fish Tanks. I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.